Hello, it's Susan Duclos with All News Pipeline. It's September 24th, 2014, and if you think the headline on this video is over the top, I'm just going to ask you to consider a few things and come up with your own answers after seeing the articles that I'm going to show you now. This one here is from August 8th. CDC, Ebola spread to the U.S. is inevitable. It says that Ebola spread to the United States is inevitable due to the nature of global airline travel, but any outbreak is not likely to be large, U.S. health authorities said Thursday. Now, that was back in early August. Now, if you take a look at the next story from MSN News, U.S. hospitals are unprepared to handle Ebola waste, and it goes on to explain how waste management companies are refusing to haul away the soiled sheets and virus-splattered protective gear associated with treating the disease, citing federal guidelines that require Ebola-related waste to be handled in special packaging by people with hazardous materials training, infectious disease, and biosafety experts told Reuters. Many U.S. hospitals are unaware of the regulatory snafu, which experts say could threaten their ability to treat any person who develops Ebola in the U.S. after coming from an infected region. It can take as long as 21 days to develop Ebola symptoms after exposure. And they go on to say that the issue did create problems already for Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, which was the first institution to care for Ebola patients here. As Emory was treating 2 U.S. missionaries who were evacuated from West Africa in August, their waste hauler, Stericycle, initially refused to handle it. Stericycle declined to comment. Now, look what they were doing. As it peaked, we were up to 40 bags a day of medical waste, which took a huge tax on our waste management system, Emory's Dr. Anish Mehta told colleagues at a medical meeting. The hospital actually sent staff to Home Depot to buy as many 32-gallon rubber waste containers with lids that they could get their hands on. Emory kept the waste in a special containment area for 6 days until its Atlanta neighbor, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, helped broker an agreement with Stericycle. Now, as it goes on to say, not if, but when. It's not a question of if Ebola is going to come to the U.S., it's when. And as the CDC had said in that previous article I just showed you, all of this will be linked in the article associated with this video, by the way. The worst Ebola outbreak on record is now projected to infect as many 20,000 people in West Africa by November, while U.S. officials have said that the number could rise above 550,000 by mid-January without an international intervention to contain its spread. Experts say it's only a matter of time before at least some infection patients are diagnosed in U.S. hospitals, most likely walking into emergency departments seeking treatment. You can read the rest of this article as well as the other one. As I said, I'll have it hyperlinked. But this brings us to when it does hit the U.S. Sure, the CDC says, oh, they doubt that it's going to become a large issue, even though it's inevitable that it'll get here. But let's take a look at how they thought it could be contained in Guinea, and now it's in all the neighboring countries. Numbers we're seeing in this one, it says what, up to 550,000 by mid-January. There are some reports that say it could hit up to 1.4 million people by mid-January. Now let's go to the story in question. Let's take a look. Natural news. Ebola death camps have been unveiled in Liberia. Disease victims to be rounded up and removed from their homes by force if necessary. Now, according to the Washington Post, the World Health Organization has announced a program which would round up Ebola victims across Liberia and herd them into Ebola death camps in order to isolate them from their families. Now, of course, they're not calling them Ebola death camps. They're calling them community care centers. Isn't that nice? Their purpose is to move the infected people out of their homes and into ad hoc centers that provide rudimentary care, says the Post. It's obvious from the context of these reports that Ebola victims' relocation to these centers will not be voluntary. In other words, people who refuse to go will simply be arrested and made to go. Now, in Liberia, reportedly a total of 70 such centers are planned on being deployed across Liberia. Each hosting 15 to 30 beds in all these facilities will handle about 1,500 Ebola patients. Now, you just saw on the other one, they're expecting 550,000. And in other reports, which I'll go ahead and link also in the article associated with this video, 1.4 million has been named. So centers that'll handle 1,500, that's not even putting a Band-Aid. That's like putting a tiny little Band-Aid on a huge, gushing, big old wound. It's just not going to work. But here comes the scary part, okay? If it comes into the United States. Now, what do you think we're going to do about it? We're already sending military there. Not doctors, military to these infected countries. Okay, now if it comes here, what do you think their military is going to do to us? You think, I mean, you look at Liberia and what you're seeing is a mirror of what is going to happen here. Ask yourself, what's going to happen when all of a sudden it becomes out of control here? They're going to let people walk around? They're going to quarantine them? They're going to quarantine whole towns? Or are they going to start dragging people out of their homes here too? Now, it says it's all rolling out like clockwork. Medical, martial law, death camps, and forced vaccinations. As natural news readers well know, I publicly predicted the deployment of forced quarantine death camps in episode 3 of the pandemic preparedness course at www.biodefense.com. Now they're about to become reality. I also publicly predicted medical martial law in episode 4, and we've all seen that exact scenario unfold in Sierra Leone over the last 3 days during a forced lockdown that resulted in nationwide food shortages. All of these outbreaks, mitigation tactics, Ebola death camps, forced quarantines, medical martial law will also be used in the United States if Ebola outbreak reaches American shores. But the extra bonus for Americans is all these tactics will be conducted by heavily militarized police and weapons-toting DHS personnel who now see the streets of America as their battleground. Yet, despite this reality, nearly all Americans go about their day-to-day lives in a delusional comfort zone, oblivious to the fact that the potential global killer is right now raging out of control just one continent away. Despite all the best efforts of the world's nations, nothing has been able to halt the spread of Ebola. Now, it goes on. Governments everywhere are in a state of denial of the true magnitude of the Ebola outbreak. How will the outbreak ever be contained after infecting 1 million people? And Americans are living in a total state of denial regarding a global pandemic. They also list their sources. This will be linked as well. Now, let's go to this conspiracy theory. That's what everybody likes to call it about FEMA camps. Well, many have already provided addresses, locations. I'll find you a couple of those and put them in the link associated with this video as well. What do you think those locations, those camps, will be used for? If an Ebola pandemic hits our shores, could you end up being there? Remember, there's now an executive order that's been signed that anybody with severe respiratory problems, or syndrome as they call it, can now be quarantined. And the government determines whether to quarantine them or not. Voluntary or not, they have the right to lock them up, to put them somewhere. Where are they going to put all these people? I mean, ask yourself these questions, especially the people that like to deny that we've been preparing for something like this, that we have FEMA camps. Every single thing that we've been warned about, that people have been yelling from the rooftops and everybody else has been accusing them of being partially nuts, is coming true. People need to think about this. Thank you.